You may or may not be aware of the social media trend Rice-Zempic, but I'm going to ask the question of what are you really drinking when you drink that rice water and looking at the real science behind this trend. Well, if you haven't heard of it, there's this thing called Rice-Zempic. Apparently, it's making its waves around certain social media websites. The science of it is basically this that you either soak rice in warm water or you boil it for a little while in extra water and then you discard the rice if you want. But really, what you do is you drink the water that's supposed to have an Ozempic like effect, suggesting that now cloudy rice water is filled with digestion resistant starch, which might help you increase your body's own GLP-1. There's many problems with this. You want to hang tight to the last one because it's a good one. First of all, there are 0 human clinical trials looking at the consumption of rice water as it pertains to GLP-1, appetite, hunger, satiety, or anything else. In fact, that I've seen, researchers haven't even done this on mice, which is how uninterested they are with this topic. 2 is, I'll show you a paper in a second, but there's probably very little digestion-resistant starch in rice water in the first place. Here's a paper that reported the amount of digestion-resistant starch in their particular study, which was about a quarter of a gram per 100 grams of rice, which did increase in the cooking method, of which they call boiling or cooking it risotto style, and it went up to about 3/4 of a gram per 100 grams of rice. But it's questionable how much actually went into the water, which they didn't report. They just said what actually happened with the rice itself. The specific amount of resistant starch that actually ends up in the rice water after soaking is not well documented, but it's likely to be minimal since most of the resistant starch remains in the rice grains themselves. So these first 2 problems are problems. Now, the next one is a big one. Now, even if, let's just pretend, if you drank cloudy rice water and it increased your body's own GLP-1 and therefore made you feel more satiated, less hungry, and affected your appetite. Well, it's still not even close to Ozempic for this simple one reason. Your body's own GLP-1 production, it has a half-life of just a matter of a few minutes. Now, what that means is let's say you have 200 units of your body's own GLP-1 when you drank this cloudy rice water, which probably doesn't happen. In a few minutes, that 200 units is now 100 units of GLP-1. A few minutes later is now 50. A few minutes later is now 25, 12.5 until it's gone. You might get an increase for maybe about an hour, but that's really about it. Now, compare that to Ozempic, which has a half-life of about a week. And that means that if you inject yourself with Ozempic with 200 units, let's just hypothetically say, a week later, it's 100 units. Now, remember, that happened within a matter of minutes with your body's own production based on something that you're eating. So for all these reasons, it doesn't even compare. Now, of the biggest problem of all is arsenic has been found in rice. And researchers, because of the concern and the toxicity of arsenic, are trying to find ways in order to decrease the amount of arsenic in rice when people consume it because it's so darn toxic. Well, it turns out rinsing rice before cooking can reduce arsenic content by up to 59%. But check this out. Boiling rice in excess water and then discarding the water can remove up to 62% of arsenic from the rice. The question then becomes is now that 62% of the arsenic that was in the rice is now not, where did it go? It went into the water. And what are we drinking with Rice-Zempic? Rice water, potentially laced with arsenic that came from the rice, in addition to the fact that it also depends on how much arsenic is in your own personal water in the first place. Question is where does it go? This paper showed that soaking rice in hot water, which is what some people do for Rice-Zempic, the arsenic concentration ranged from, in the water, by the way, 5.67 to 13.3 nanograms per gram. If you boil it, it goes up to 17.7 nanograms per gram. And now this paper itself was looking at the amount of rice, arsenic in the rice water itself. Now pay close attention to these numbers for a second. The arsenic concentration in the gruel of the rice water ranged from 97 to 197 micrograms per kilogram, which is also converted into micrograms per liter, with a median concentration of about 144. This suggests that rice water can retain a substantial amount of arsenic. What are we drinking with the Rice-Zempic? The rice water, depending on how it was initially cooked in the first place. Now, pay close attention to this. I asked you to remember the numbers from that previous slide. The World Health Organization, like them or not, suggests of a arsenic level that might consider to be okay or safe, about 10 micrograms per liter. Now, if you remember in that previous one, the mean or median was about 144. It went up to about 197. The lowest was 97 micrograms per kilogram or liter. And this says here, particularly those reaching or exceeding 100 micrograms per liter are generally regarded as high. So the amount of arsenic leaching itself into the water, according to the last study, listen, this is a problem. Now, if some people say, you know what, I drink this rice water and I'm not hungry, well, guess what? It turns out that arsenic increases the expression of this thing called leptin, a hormone made in your fat cells, and consequently suppressed appetite. So let's just say you're following this TikTok social media trend of drinking rice water. It doesn't increase GLP-1. There's no human clinical trials on this. Even if it did increase GLP-1, it's nothing like Ozempic in terms of its longevity or its half-life. Now it turns out you may be actually consuming large amounts of arsenic, which may actually suppress your appetite. So maybe it does quote unquote work, but for all the wrong reasons, especially when you consider all the chronic conditions or toxic effects of arsenic. So just to review, there's very little digestion-resistant starch in rice in the first place. Even if there were some, it would have be nothing like Ozempic in terms of the half-life of your own endogenous GLP-1 production compared to the exogenous half-life of something like Ozempic or semaglutide. There is, however, considerable arsenic in rice water, which might actually be contributing to satiety, but it's also highly toxic. Therefore, for all the reasons, I say a big no to Rice-Zempic. And I have to ask the question is, might we want to change the name of this? So I'll just let you kind of read between the lines on that. Instead of following the influence, you should probably follow the evidence, which is why here at Metabolic Fitness, if you're interested in evidence-based information on Ozempic or Wegovy or semaglutide or any of the GLP-1 agonists or any hot topics in nutritional or functional medicine, head over to metabolicfitnesspro.com to check out what we're up to.